Right, this is my review, or more of a homage really, to Blue Planet, and to be honest, sort of David Attenborough and all the work he's done throughout his lifetime. I absolutely love David Attenborough work, and this is why I've kind of done this sort of review-ish like video, because I just wanted to sort of basically pay my respects to all the sort of different stuff he's done over the years, and just sort of highlight to anyone who hasn't watched any of these things before quite how brilliant David Attenborough nature programs are, and especially in this case Blue Planet 2. So what I'm basically going to do in this review is have a little look at sort of some of what I would deem as the best bits, so to speak. There's lots of great bits throughout the entire series. This is just a sort of a sum up of sort of maybe sort of like 5 or so of my sort of favourite bits, along with a few sort of nods to some of the other bits. So just a quick little bit of background. Blue Planet, the original that came out, I think maybe at the very end of the 90s, was the sort of the first nature programme I really sort of found myself intrigued and sort of drawn into, and a lot of that was to do with the whole deep sea thing, because we were beginning to discover stuff about the deep sea. We didn't know too much, and with Attenborough programs you get to see things you've never seen before, and this is what's so great about the Attenborough programs. I know a lot of the sort of the work and stuff is done by other film crews, as opposed to David sort of being on site like he may have used to have been, but it's the profound way in which he explains things, his narration. I've grown up with his voice my entire life on the BBC, and the way he sort of like puts words together to form the sentences he does, quite often, especially some of his closing sort of lines and stuff at the end of episodes, are very, very thought-provoking, and just sort of show you all these wonderful, amazing things that happen out in nature, and just gives you this glimpse that's obviously taken these other people like 6-7 months, maybe years to get hold of just this sort of few minute footage. But we get to see this, and then we get the narration and everything, and it's just so brilliantly done. So yeah, actually the first scene's kind of a combination of two scenes really, and it's more of a sort of a nod to the octopus, which again is something we have seen quite a few times in previous things, but it's just the range and the abilities that an octopus has. It seems to be able to do so many different things in terms of camouflage, its little oil spills it can do to get away from things, having 8 tentacles with all these suckers on. It's got so much at its disposal. And it's also so intelligent, and we see that with a couple of these scenes. One where it does a great job of disguising itself, basically picking up shells from around it and using them to sort of create like a shield as such, or a cocoon. So it disguises itself from the shark that's trying to hunt it down, and the shark can't really figure out what's going on. It can pick up its scent and everything, but by the time it's even really got any idea of what's going on, the octopus has already disappeared and vanished. This is some very, very impressive footage. The second bit is to do with an octopus and a coral grouper, where they're working together to basically catch fish. The coral grouper sort of goes around and finds areas where the fish are. The coral grouper doesn't have the ability to catch these fish in these rocks and in these crevices, but the octopus does. So what happens is the octopus goes over to the rocks and catches some of the fish, but at the same time some of the fish will escape, and those are the ones that the coral grouper catches. And so these two sort of work together as a team to basically hunt fish around the coral reef. And again, like, the reason I pick up on that is because, again, it's great footage that they've managed to find here, and it shows you stuff that you haven't seen before. And it's always fascinating seeing different species, especially different species so varied, working together for a common goal. How many other times does that actually go on out in nature that we just don't realise? We think so often that species are very much separated from one another. Not all the time, but very often. So it's always a surprise to see. Right, the next scene is a kind of deep sea water sea snake or something along those lines. And it's in this bit where there's brine at the bottom of the sea, so it almost creates like another sort of lake if you haven't seen the scene before, or maybe previous things of sort of deep sea stuff. So what's been found is when they dive to the bottom of the sea, there's areas where there's sort of large, sort of almost what looks like underwater lakes, and this is sort of brine, so it's a lot thicker and denser than the seawater itself. So yeah, it's a sort of a strange thing where you've got like a lake underneath the sea, and within this scene it's quite a sinister one actually, because you have this snake sort of darting in and out. Assumingly there's some sort of food in there or something. It's not entirely clear what's going on, but you see it sort of go in and it disappears into there, then comes back out, and then it goes back in again, and then when it comes out another time, it just starts sort of going into sort of a spasm and sort of creating these various different knots with its body and slowly sort of sinking back into the brine, and seemingly manages to sort of bring itself back into sort of relative consciousness to be able to swim away back to the shores as such of the brine lake. They really do capture, although it's pretty obvious, nature's showing it itself, that sort of drama where you see this snake's kind of going psychotic. Real sort of sinister area, this sort of death pool that sort of, if you get too close, you will die. You can't make this stuff up, and there it is for you all to see. Nature's bringing it to us. the way they do these, I know I keep saying it, but the way they do this stuff and the way they narrate it, it's so brilliantly done. You know, Hollywood quite often would struggle to achieve the level of drama that actually is just going on a day-to-day basis. Right, this next scene is looking at the cuttlefish. There's a few different scenes in Blue Planet 2 with the cuttlefish. This one's looking at how it uses its pigmentations in its skin to, in essence, hypnotise, it seems, a crab. And part of the reason I focus on this is because this, a bit like if you ever saw Life in the Undergrowth, some of the stuff that goes on in the sea compared to what we see on land and stuff is just sci-fi, ridiculous. It's if you weren't seeing it, you wouldn't believe it. And this is a great example of that. It has some very impressive abilities that it can do with its skin and changing colour, as we know. But the fact that it can sort of hypnotise, that's getting into a whole new realm of stuff. The variation of things that how have these creatures figured out how to do this? It's incredible how evolution sometimes sends certain things off. And the repertoire of sort of skills and stuff these creatures have at their disposal, as similar to the octopus in terms of camouflage and just the general intelligence, is just mind-boggling. And these guys and the squid and stuff, the reason I sort of partly reference this is I do feel that we're going to see a lot more of these things in the sea as the years to come. They're such advanced predators, and the fact that we're taking other advanced predators sort of out of the seas, I think we're going to sort of see, and we already are in certain places, a real explosion of squid and various versions of that sort of area of the animal kingdom. Because, like you see, they're very, very smart, and in essence, they quite often are actually smarter than their own predators. Okay, so this next one again is sort of playing on the sort of the sci-fi thing. Certainly, it reminds me of a certain monster in Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. The Bobbit. We'll see. So this again is quite a sinister, dark one. This is one of the scenes actually that people may have seen, even if they haven't watched Blue Planet 2. But yeah, once again, the narration's great, but the music and stuff really does generate that sort of sinister scene. So as you'll see sort of from these images, this creature lives underneath the surface of the seabed and basically waits for its prey to sort of come its way, and then it pounces and grabs it. Now there's obviously plenty of other animals that do this sort of thing, but this particular scene was, unfortunately I can't show you the full footage, but the music and the lighting and everything of what was going on, it's very, very dramatic, and the animal itself is a very, very sinister creature, and certainly I think is probably one of the more notable points within the Blue Planet 2 series. Okay, now this is the last scene. It's the hydrothermal vents. There's a few different parts of this. I remember when I first saw these on Blue Planet 1, it was absolutely fascinating to see there was so much life and just general stuff going on around these small little areas at the bottom of the sea where it's completely dark. The pressure's ridiculous. To an extent we didn't really think life could exist there. And it clearly does, and we've discovered more and more, as the Blue Planet 2 clearly shows, and made some further discoveries in terms of that as well, in terms of what could well be the actual creation of life almost pretty much going on in front of us on one of these thermal vents, which is absolutely fascinating and obviously opens up all sorts of options, not only in terms of different places where life might be on Earth, but different places where life might be anywhere. If these are the sort of the conditions that you may need, they're not quite as, or they're to an extent more hostile and possibly more available across by our solar system, let alone the universe. And that I find absolutely fascinating. Obviously, the quest to find life elsewhere is growing, and we're finding more and more, not necessarily evidence, but places where it might well be. Having this sort of knowledge, knowing that, in high pressure, dark places where sunlight, for example, is not even getting there, something that we thought would probably be an essential requirement, is fascinating and definitely increases the chances of life being elsewhere. Whether that's for good or for bad for mankind, only time will tell. So yeah, in conclusion, I hope you've sort of enjoyed sort of hearing a little bit of what I've got to say about the various scenes and stuff. These are just some of the scenes that I thought were sort of more maybe awe-inspiring, or at least so brilliantly done that I'd sort of referenced them. There are obviously loads of great scenes throughout the series. Let me know if you think there's better ones that should have been on there, anything like that. The reason I did this is just because I've enjoyed Attenborough stuff so much over the years. It's absolute premium quality TV. You're barely ever let down by anything, and the amount of times the various things that Attenborough has said throughout these various series has completely inspired me and made me think way beyond the sort of the realms of what I would have seen or thought. And the things that nature can do just makes you realise how many more things, to an extent, human discoveries can be made, because some of the stuff they use, our military would absolutely love that. Not so much within Blue Planet 2, but certainly if you've never seen Life in the Undergrowth, go and watch that, because some of the chemical warfare and stuff that goes on with some of the insects and things is incredible. And to be honest, if our military had the abilities to do these things, even though there's probably some UN charters that bans it, they would be doing it. So yeah, in conclusion, my overall score for Blue Planet 2 probably isn't a massive surprise, but this is my first 10 out of 10. I will probably 10 out of 10 most things that Attenborough ever does and ever has done. So I'm a bit biased in that respect. But like I say, it's just so good, and the narration is so good. The quality of the footage is so good. The sound that's combined with these things is always so good. They create this drama so it feels like some sort of Hollywood movie set, but it's actually real life going on. You know, while you and I are going to work, these dramas are taking place all over the world, and it's just, you know, amazing. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, I wasn't really too sure what to do, but I just wanted to sort of do a video in kind of homage to Attenborough, and also all of the BBC crew that are involved with all the various programmes he's made over the decades and decades now. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it.